Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely incredible, the rise of imperial dynasties, and specifically, the systemic evolution that allowed Chinese empires to rise, rule, and endure for literally millennia. Now, we usually view history as just this dry list of dates and battles, right? But today, we're taking a completely different angle. We are going to look at the actual political technology, the structural engineering of society itself that allowed these massive dynasties to function.
Just think about this for a second. By the late 18th century, the Qing dynasty managed a staggering one-third of the world's population. It was the largest economy on the globe. It's almost hard to wrap your head around a scale like that. How do you even begin to legitimize ruling that many people? How do you keep incredibly wealthy families in check, administer justice across vast distances, and maintain the absolute belief that you actually have the right to rule the whole shebang?
To find out, here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. The Heavenly Mandate, 2. Forging the First Empire, 3. The Han Master Formula, 4. The Meritocratic Machine, and finally, 5. The Final Collapse.
Chapter 1. The Heavenly Mandate, a built-in check.
We're beginning our journey way back in the Bronze Age, looking at the foundational blueprint of power that made dynastic rule possible in the first place. You see, political power in ancient China wasn't just about whoever had the biggest army. The Zhou dynasty, around 1046 BC, used this exact concept, the Mandate of Heaven, to legitimize overthrowing the previous Shang dynasty. They basically claimed that a moral deity, heaven, had given them divine sanction to rule. But here is the genius and frankly surprising part. It was conditional. If a ruler lost their moral compass or if massive natural disasters hit, boom, heaven withdrew its mandate. The political theorist Mencius later argued it was actually the duty of the population to overthrow a bad ruler. So it created this dynastic cycle, a built-in mechanism for regime change whenever things went wrong.
So let's trace how this blueprint actually scales up over the centuries, shifting from the fading power of the ancient Zhou directly into the forging of the very first true unified empires, the Qin and the Han.
Chapter 2. Forging the First Empire, the Qin Efficiency.
Moving into the 3rd century BC, China was facing a massive crisis. The region was totally fractured into divided, warring states. It was a period of really intense military and political competition. Well, that is until the state of Qin organized an extraordinary, highly efficient war machine that just overwhelmed everyone else. And what's truly fascinating here is how the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, completely threw out the old playbook. In 221 BC, he didn't just want to be another king with a mandate of heaven. He rejected that concept entirely. He aimed for permanent, absolute control. He stripped aristocratic families of their hereditary power, divided his new empire into 36 commanderies and prefectures, all directly managed by a state bureaucracy. He standardized the written language, the laws, the weights, and the measures. Basically, he wanted a well-oiled machine that would rule for 10,000 generations.
But talk about a dramatic slice of historical irony. This ruthless, legalistic efficiency failed to build lasting legitimacy. They claimed 10,000 generations, yeah? But the Qin dynasty collapsed shortly after the first emperor died. They had completely solved the problem of military unification, for sure, but they created a massive governance problem for whoever came next. How on earth do you rule an empire without the people instantly rebelling against your harsh bureaucracy?
Chapter 3. The Han Master Formula. Odd, but successful.
This brings us to the Han dynasty. After a tumultuous few decades following the Qin collapse, a ruler emerged named Emperor Wu, or Han Wudi, who brilliantly solved this crisis of legitimacy. As political theorist Michael Puett points out, Han Wudi did something incredibly clever. He kept the strict, highly effective legal bureaucracy and state institutions of the Qin, but he wrapped them up in the moral legitimacy of the old Zhou dynasty. He claimed to have received the mandate of heaven, he established academies for the study of Confucian classics, and he promised virtuous governance. This odd amalgam, a hereditary monarch claiming divine mandate, supported by a vast legal and military bureaucracy, became the absolute master formula that would define Chinese imperial history for millennia to come.
And this formula created a rigidly structured society to maintain order. At the absolute top was the emperor, and notably the Empress Dowager, who wielded immense power. She was even able to issue edicts or appoint a new emperor if needed. Right below them were the aristocrats and bureaucrats who actually ran the state. Interestingly enough, skilled laborers like farmers and ironworkers formed a highly respected middle class, while unskilled servants and slaves made up the bottom tier. Everyone had a clearly defined place. You didn't even dare address the emperor by his actual name.
Chapter 4: The Meritocratic Machine, Divorcing Power and Wealth.
Now, the system wasn't done evolving. Our next major leap forward occurs as the imperial state searches for a way to break the dangerous stranglehold of wealthy, land-holding aristocratic families who were constantly threatening the central government's power. For centuries, local power was purely aristocratic, who was tied to bloodlines and vast estates. But to centralize control, the state engineered a massive pivot toward bureaucratic power. Starting in the Sui dynasty and expanding heavily in the Tang, they grew a civil service examination system. Basically, to get a government job, you had to pass rigorous tests on Confucian learning. Furthermore, these officials were constantly relocated around the empire to prevent them from building up cozy local networks of power.
The catalyst for supercharging this exam system is actually fascinating. During the Tang dynasty, China's only officially recognized empress, Wu Zetian, took power. Because she was outside the traditional royal Li family, the old aristocratic elites completely opposed her. So, what did she do? Well, to bypass them, she massively expanded the imperial examinations, intentionally creating a brand new, elite class of loyal bureaucrats who came from much humbler origins. It was a brilliant political maneuver, a real loophole strategy that fundamentally shifted Chinese society. The ultimate triumph of this exam system, which was fully realized by the 14th century, was that it completely divorced sheer wealth from state power. Even the children of wealthy aristocrats or merchants had to sit down, study the classics, and pass the exams if they wanted any political influence at all. It meant the state was run by scholars who were, at least in theory, socialized to act on behalf of the entire population rather than just narrow wealthy interests. It was an absolutely breathtakingly early version of a meritocracy.
Chapter 5: The Final Collapse, Western Encroachment.
So we have this highly evolved, brilliantly engineered, 2,000-year-old bureaucratic system. How does something that robust finally break? Well, the Qing dynasty, the last imperial dynasty, actually reached unprecedented heights. Under the Qianlong emperor in 1796, they were at their absolute zenith, administering the largest global economy. But their conservative, land-based Confucian bureaucracy simply couldn't adapt to a completely new type of threat: the sudden, aggressive naval and industrial encroachment of the European powers. The devastating defeat by the British in the 1839 Opium Wars just shocked the system, forcing China into unequal treaties, ceding territory like Hong Kong, and allowing the massive importation of opium. While the 5,000-year-old dynastic system didn't collapse overnight, this violent collision critically shifted the balance of power in Asia and sparked the internal rebellions that would eventually bring the whole empire to an end in 1912.
We've seen how China evolved from Bronze Age divine mandates to ruthless legalist empires to a sophisticated meritocratic bureaucracy that governed a third of humanity. As you think about how this monumental system finally fractured under the weight of modern industrialism, I want you to consider a final thought. Look at the modern world around us. Are the concepts of centralized bureaucracy, merit-based governance, and the conditional mandate of heaven truly just things of the past? Or, when you look at massive tech monopolies and modern global superpowers today, do the structural echoes of these ancient dynasties still quietly shape who has the power to rule? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this gives you a powerful new lens for understanding the systemic evolution of history.